Hello everybody, I'm Gina Taylor from WVU Extension, and today we're going to talk about some safety tips for canners. Never overfill your canner. That's the number one thing. Your canner is actually designed for a certain number of jars, and so pay attention to your manufacturer's instructions to make sure that you're not overfilling it. It could lead to your jars not being processed enough, and it can also lead to some safety concerns like too much water or too many jars. You know, you might have a problem with an exploding canner. We don't want that. That would be very bad. Number two is always use the proper amount of water in your canner. For a hot water bath canner, you're going to put enough water in to cover the jars by about 1 inch. But for a pressure canner, you're going to need to read the instructions for your specific canner. This particular canner takes 3 quarts of water, or about 2 inches in the bottom. There's a little nick in the bottom where you can see exactly how much water you should put in. The water is not going to cover the jars in a pressure canner because the water gets hot enough that steam flows between your jars and throughout the canner, so you don't have to have as much water as you do in a hot water bath canner. After each use, you should remove the gasket from your canner and wash it in warm soapy water and then let it air dry. So set it out and let it dry and then replace it in the lid. Now occasionally you're going to want to remove and wash the air vent. That's this part on the top. It's got a little screw on the bottom, and when you remove that, you're just going to run a pipe cleaner or a very small brush through it to make sure that it's clean. And you also want to look at the holes all around to make sure they're clean as well. And you can also clean those with a pipe cleaner. Again, wash them with warm soapy water and let them air dry. Occasionally remove the overpressure plug as well. That's this little rubber part right here. You can pull it out from the top, or you can push it down from the bottom. That's the easier way. And then you're going to want to wash that with warm soapy water and again set it aside and let it dry. It's very easy to put back in. All you have to do is press it up through the bottom and boom, there it is. All right, the air vent or cover lock also comes apart, also has a screw mechanism in the back. So you can just take that out, wash it again, set it aside and let it dry. And so you see we've washed and cleaned all of our components, and that will make sure that we have a good, safe canning experience. Now, manufacturers recommend replacing this overpressure plug and the gasket every 3 years. So it's very important to do that. In the meantime though, when you're washing your gasket, you want to make sure that it doesn't have any nicks or cracks in it, because that will prevent your canner from sealing. You want it to be nice and pliable and soft, and when it gets to the point where you begin to see cracks or nicks, you definitely want to replace that. But again, the manufacturers recommend you do that every 3 years anyway, because they can get too dried out to use. When you're storing your canner, instead of locking the lid onto it, you want to invert the lid and just set it right on the top. That'll keep your canner from building up odors that you might be undesirable when you're trying to use your canner. And never force cool your canner. It's a big mistake. The cool down and depressurizing time in the canning process is actually part of the canning process time. And so if you force cool it or depressurize it by taking off the regulator, then what will happen is your foods will not be processed correctly and you could potentially make your family sick. So you don't want to do that. Another thing that can happen is that your lid can warp, and making it very difficult to get back on the canner, or impossible, may even make it impossible to get off the canner. And you can warp the bottom. And once the bottom is warped, you should never use your canner again. So make sure you don't do any of those things. Thanks for watching. Like and follow for more safe canning information, and happy canning. All right, I noticed how dirty my canner is.